Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Life of Barney. And today we're going to talk about what a meat stall is, why it happens, can we avoid it, and all kinds of things surrounding that awkward phase of smoking some of our larger pieces of meat. Some of you may already know what it is. Maybe this video is not for you, but I think you should stick around anyway and leave some comments down below on what you do to overcome the meat stall or what you like to do in your barbecue sessions. And for you pro beginners who are here to learn something, roll the intro. Let class begin. What is a meat stall? You guys have no idea how hard I'm trying to write neatly so you can even read what I'm doing. Listen, when we cook, pick up that piece of chalk there. When we cook larger pieces of meat, there's a lot of moisture that comes out during the smoking process, during the whole cooking process, okay? You see it when you open up your smoker and all that smoke dissipates and you can actually see the meat. There's a little bit of steam that's coming off of it, okay? When your meat, let's draw a little graph here, all right? So we'll just say this is time, okay? Which of course is different for every different cut of meat. And this will be temperature, okay? We'll say 0 degrees. Let's say 150 and 200, all right? Fahrenheit, degrees Fahrenheit. What happens is that as you're cooking a piece of meat, you know, the temperature kind of comes up like this, and you'll notice sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's 4 hours, sometimes it's 6 hours. It depends on how big that piece of meat is. But you'll notice somewhere around that 150 to, let's say, 170 degree mark, all of a sudden, the internal temperature of your piece of meat just flattens out. It doesn't get any warmer. You don't know what's going on. It looks okay. Your temperature on your cooker, your smoker is holding your nice 225, 250, 300, whatever it is. But the meat's not coming up in temperature. That's what's called the meat stall. And we get that on all of our big cuts of meat. Brisket, any of our roasts, you got rump roasts. If you have any larger piece of meat that you're doing specifically low and slow, okay? Low and slow. This is not an issue if you're grilling something on the barbecue up at like 400, 500, 600 degrees, or grilling steaks, hot dogs, whatever. It's only when we're dealing in the low and slow environment and your meat comes up to that 150 mark. This right here is the stall. All right, we're going to talk about what causes this, but after some time goes by, you will notice that all of a sudden the temperature of the meat continues until you hit whatever your desired temperature is, and you take it off your smoker. All right, next, let's talk about what causes a meat stall. I'm having a lot of fun with this prop using the blackboard here. All right, what causes a meat stall? All right, so let's just take like a piece of, I don't know, like a chuck roast. Hey, Wilbur, let's take a chuck roast, for example, all right? As things are warming up in the smoker, what happens is we get moisture droplets happening on the outside of the meat. It starts to sweat basically in the heat of the smoker. Now the thing is, with the heat of the smoker, it's just enough to convert these small droplets of water into steam. And the water begins to evaporate off of the meat. No big deal, right? Looks amazing when you see it happening. Looks delicious. It looks more like a friggin' baked potato is what it looks like. Anyway, as that water evaporates, there's actually a process that's happening while the water evaporates. It's called evaporative cooling. Every time some molecules of water evaporate into steam, they pull heat off of the meat. And this happens at such a speed, such a rate of evaporation, that the cooling that's caused by it cancels out the effect of the heat coming from the charcoal at the bottom of your smoker, or whatever kind of smoker you have, a pellet smoker, propane, gas, electric, whatever. The cooling effect actually cancels out the heat coming into the meat from your heat source. And this is why, as I showed in the previous section, you hit that stall. This generally happens at a specific temperature when you're cooking your meat, which we'll get into next. But that is what the meat stall is. It's the evaporative cooling effect of the moisture evaporating off the surface of the meat. And again, it's only happening when we are cooking low and slow. Now let's touch on how long a meat stall will last. And I wish I had an exact answer for you. You see, the thing is, it depends on how much moisture is inside the piece of meat, which means it depends on how thick that piece of meat is, right? It's not necessarily about how wide or how much of the grill it covers. Yes, there's more surface area of the meat and therefore more surface area for moisture to be on. It's about how much moisture is inside the meat, which is going to be different for every single cut that you put on your smoker. 2 chuck roasts are not going to have the same moisture content. 2 briskets are not going to have the same moisture content. 2 racks of beef ribs are not going to have the same moisture content. It will change for every piece of meat. This is what kind of makes it tricky about how long it's going to last. Now, for some cuts, like if you're doing a chuck roast or a blade roast, for example, you might only be looking at 30 minutes. If you're doing a massive brisket on, let's say, the 22-inch Weber Smoky Mountain, or you have a large pellet grill or a pellet smoker, pardon me, a little spider hanging from my hat. If you have a huge brisket on, say, a pellet grill or some other smoker where you can fit a very large and very thick brisket on there, you could be looking at well over an hour before enough moisture has evaporated off the piece of meat. The overall moisture in the meat has been reduced a little bit so that it's not sweating out of the meat fast enough to cool it through the evaporative cooling process. But with a big piece of meat and a very thick piece of meat that's got lots of moisture in it, you could be looking at well into an hour and a half, depending on how massive that piece of meat might be. So for time, it varies. So the question is, what's going on inside that piece of meat if the temperature isn't going anywhere during the meat stall? Well, some good stuff actually. First and foremost, The fat, rendering. That's some good stuff. It's where a lot of your flavors coming from on the inside. And even though you may be hung up around 150 to 100 or 150 to about 170 degrees Fahrenheit, that doesn't mean nothing's happening. It just means the temperature is not rising. But on the inside, your fat's rendering. And as we know, that's where some of the most amazing flavors can come from. Second, your collagen is starting to break down inside the meat. This is helping it fall apart. This is helping it get that much more tender as the collagen breaks down. Another good thing, even when the temperature on the inside isn't coming up. And lastly, your bark is still forming up, and you're probably at this point getting into the final stages of the bark being fully set. Turns out, during the meat stall, it's not really that bad of a thing. Now we should probably talk about what happens if you don't have the time to wait through a meat stall and you want to keep pushing your cook forward. How do we push through the meat stall? Great question. This one saved me a lot of times. It's when you're looking at the clock, you're looking at the temperature of the smoker, you're looking at the temperature of the meat, and that meat isn't moving. And you're on a time limit before you need to have dinner on the table. Maybe you're cooking for some guests and you want this to just go great. You don't want anybody waiting longer than they have to serve dinner or whatever the case might be.
Dad, look it. I pulled out a root.
Oh, that's a huge root. Good job. You're so strong. Nice work keeping that sandbox clean. So I'd like to introduce you to something called the Texas crutch. I have no idea why it's called the Texas crutch and not the Alabama crutch or the Alberta crutch or the, I don't even know. This refers to wrapping your meat, okay? Almost everybody knows this, but for us pro beginners that may not know, there's two usual wrapping types. One is tin foil, and the other is butcher paper. But how do these two even help push through the meat stall? They hold in the moisture, for starters, and they stop the evaporative cooling process. And if you can stop the evaporative cooling process, you'll stop the meat from being stuck at that same temperature and force it to basically skip the meat stall and continue cooking to whatever your desired finished tenderness and temperature is. There are some things to know about tin foil and butcher paper though. With tin foil, you're going to have a very moist piece of meat by the time you're done, assuming you didn't lose too much moisture during the first part of your smoke. Your bark might not be the greatest. Should still be nice if you can get one to set it up, but it's not top notch. But that's okay, we're all pro beginners here. But butcher paper, on the other hand, you'll have great bark, Well, it's awkward writing at the bottom of here. Great bark. And you'll have less moisture.
Daddy?
What's up, Evie?
The one with less moisture or moisture?
Well, and see, that's a very good question. And for those of you who didn't hear, my daughter just asked, do we want the one with more moisture or less moisture? And it really depends. It depends on what that family likes to eat or what the person doing the barbecue likes to eat. Some people don't really care if there's that nice crunchy bark on the outside of their piece of meat. I'm okay if there's not the greatest bark on the outside of the meat, Evie, but what I like is for there to be a lot of moisture. Nobody likes a dry piece of meat, and I'd rather not risk having a dry, pardon me, I would rather not risk a dry piece of meat just so the bark sets up that much better. So in answer to your question, Evie, in the Barney household, we like more moisture.
Daddy?
So that's why Daddy's always wrapping it with tin foil. All right, so Evelyn's left us some good tips here. For brisket, tin foil. There's a couple pieces of meat here. No, sorry. All right, guys, here's the summary of the meat stall. Totally normal. It's happened to everybody at least once. It kicks in around 150 to around 170 degrees Fahrenheit. All it is just evaporative cooling. Okay? And you can wrap to push through, which you don't have to. And then for any pro beginners out there who are just getting into both barbecue, like grilling, smoking meats, any of that, remember, it's only when we are cooking low and slow. Okay? So that's it, guys. I know this was a bit different. It was kind of fun for me to do this. I liked using the prop, and I will say if you made it this far, you may as well hit subscribe. Get after it, guys. Get your smokers fired up. All you pro beginners out there, myself included. Just remember, when you're temp probing that piece of meat and it's stuck at like 160 Fahrenheit and you come back 20 minutes later, it's still 160. Don't accidentally tell your family, oh, it's cooking along, it'll be done soon, because you might be in the meat stall. Go grab yourself some tin foil, wrap it up, and you can push through and hopefully still get dinner on the table when you said you would. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope it was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for everyone that's been leaving comments on all my videos. I really appreciate it. Slap the like button and subscribe. I am trying to get this YouTube channel up and running. I'm at like, I think 738 or 740 subscribers now or something like that. So thanks a lot for all the support, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. And don't tell my parents I was smoking in the backyard.
Haha, that's a funny joke.
I'll see you in the next one.